Hey guys, nothing important here, and today I'm here to deliver a tier list on Season of the Haunted in Destiny 2. Now how we'll be doing the tier list is that we'll be using characters that are relevant to the season that matter. So this means we use characters like Callus, or we use characters like Savathûn. Characters like the Witness haven't been revealed to us in the lore yet, so we're not going to be talking about the Witness, nor any character stronger than the Witness. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the video.
Their leaders belong to you. The rest await extermination. No. Gather them. I will take them all.
In the number 5 spot is Oryx. Now the reason why Oryx is at number 5 is because of the following. First, he's the strongest hive god within the hive hierarchy. The hive hierarchy uses a system called the tithe system. This tithe system allows the hive to be able to feed their worms and gain more power and allow them to essentially become stronger because of the tribute sent to them. How it works is like this. You're a normal thrall, you're at the very bottom of the hive, you're essentially nothing. Then eventually you devour enough tribute and you send some of it up to the gods. There's a beyond infinite amount of hive, so this is passively happening at a beyond infinite rate. Eventually, you devour enough tribute and you become something called an acolyte. An acolyte is a stronger hive than, say, compared to a thrall, but is weaker than, say, a knight or a wizard. Anyway, you go from an acolyte to eventually a knight or a wizard, and I think for the hive it depends on gender, but I'm not too fully sure on the matter. Someone can correct me in the comments below. But anyway, eventually you're a knight or a wizard, and you eventually devour enough tribute and send enough of it up to your gods that you eventually gain this space called a throne world. In the throne worlds, there is a lot of throne worlds. First off, how they work is that they're a mind cosmos that's completely at the control of the user. Space and time exist as merely axioms within the throne world, and that their wish is essentially law. Oryx's law is sword logic, so in order to essentially compete in his realm, you have to compete via sword logic, because he's a sword logic god. In Savathûn's, it'd be cunning, in Zero Wrath's, it would be essentially war. It depends on the user of the world, and it depends how they set up the world. Because it can set up for very radically different circumstances upon how you fight that being. For example, in Oryx's Throne World, we had to go and outright challenge into a fight, while Savathûn, we had to gain enough knowledge to take her on in the same manner that she would take someone else on by getting enough knowledge and being, well, having more knowledge than them, basically. As that's how Savathûn prefers fighting people. Not really directly the slightest, as we all know in Witchcraft. Anyway, and for Zebra Wrath, she's a war goddess. You essentially have to challenge Zebra Wrath to war, just as Empress Keitel did. Now, on the second part of the scale, you have a beyond infinite amount of thrones, and that they're in a stacking pattern. How it works is like this. Say you have the very bottom of the throne worlds. And then a throne world above it would be stacking above the first world. And say there was a difference of 2. And then say you had a third throne above the second, that would be a difference of 4 or higher. And then you had a fourth world above the third, that would be a difference of 8 or much higher. Anyway, it goes and it's endless. It could be a beyond infinite amount of thrones, merely just an infinite amount of thrones. But anyway, you eventually arrive at a place where eventually the gaps then become inaccessible. Maybe inaccessible 1 or inaccessible 2. But anyway, the same would go for as to how the infinite worlds went. Instead, the differences are inaccessible. And eventually, you arrive at the hive gods, such as Crota and the Daughters of Oryx. And eventually, you arrive at Quoria, and eventually you arrive at the 3 top gods, Zebra Wrath, Savathûn, and Oryx. Oryx scales above Zebra Wrath and Savathûn because they have to take on Oryx and temporarily nerf him, while he can come back and casually beat the 2 at the time. The problem is for Oryx is that his scaling doesn't really extend much past Witch Queen, so where he is in comparison to Savathûn in the main character by Witch Queen is up for debate. However, what we do know is that Oryx is no longer simply number one in his spot. Now there is debate as to how strong Oryx is in comparison to other characters in his tier, because there are characters that have reached him in power. With that being said, let's go ahead and move on to number 4.
I saw the end before it happened. My own death, brought on by the separation from my power. And in these final moments, I looked to the sky. Hello, old friend. I've chased you for a long time. First as an enemy, then as a collector, and finally, now, a supplicant. What is it the Guardians say? Devotion inspires bravery. Bravery inspires sacrifice. And sacrifice... Here we are. Wouldn't it be clever of you if after everything, you simply let me die? Oh, what a trick. Elegant. Is that it? If there is an answer, I don't hear it. Because now the world begins to fade.
In our number 4 spot is Savathûn. This is because of several reasons. Number 1, Savathûn was about to seal the Traveler inside her throne world in order to hide it from the witness. Number 2, Savathûn managed to cast a light curse on Rhulk and his pyramid ship, and at the same time, outright annihilate his pyramid ship, which caused Rhulk to essentially rely on the Upended to escape. The fire team had to raid the pyramid ship so that Rhulk wouldn't let off the Upended and potentially destroy everything with it. So Savathûn dying, which is what caused the raid to happen, which at the same time gives us the scaling that allows us to confidently put Savathûn above Oryx. At the end of the day, Savathûn is just one step ahead of Oryx in terms of scaling because it was scaling to Rhulk. It's a no-brainer, literally. Like, there should be no debate here. Anyway, time for number 3. For our number 3 spot is actually the caretaker. Now the reason for this is actually pretty simple. In the final fight with Savathûn, we know that Savathûn scales to or above the main character in the final fight, but what we don't actually know is if Savathûn scales to the Battle of the Disciple fire team. Whereas say in the Battle of the Disciple, the entire fire team goes up against the caretaker, but they can't hurt the caretaker. They have to repeatedly stun caretaker at his weak spot and remove his resistances to try to hurt him, but what ends up happening is that we 3-phase him canonically. We 3-phase him on 3 floors, meaning it takes a really long time to kill Caretaker, even with the fire team of 6. So between Savathûn and the Caretaker should just be outright stronger than compared to Savathûn. So for our number 3 spot is going to be the Caretaker. So now, let's move on to number 2.
Intentions aside, Savathûn is solely responsible for her own ruin. If only we'd known the flood she was holding back. These things don't see themselves as gods, no. They believe themselves so much more than that. And yet, with all that power, it was wielders of light and dark, saviors of humanity, who brought them down. Regardless of victory, we must remember that was only a taste of success, barely achieved. There will be more, and the power they hold will pale in comparison to that of their maker, the Witness. We must now face an inevitable truth. The Witness and its followers, they're coming. All of them. And when they get here, we'll finish what they started.
For our number 2 spot, it's Rhulk. The reasoning is very simple. Compared to the caretaker, who at least can be stunned, with Rhulk it's a very different story. With Rhulk, he summons a giant shield, something of which you have to knock down via several attacks of the shield by tanking several attacks from Rhulk in order to throw it back at the shield in order to knock it down. Except you have to attack the shield several times just to knock it down. And finally, after you knock it down, then you have to continue on the Upended, where you have to challenge Rhulk to a fight and destroy his glaive 3 times. And then during those 3 times, you have to take the energy from the glaive, put it inside the Upended, where the Upended then fires an attack which annihilates Rhulk's invulnerability and possibly weakens him. During which, we're actually finally able to fight, if not outright kill him. Whereas say with the caretaker, all you have to do is simply stun him until his shields are removed, then you can hurt him, and then finally kill him over time. With Rhulk, he's a lot harder to kill compared to the caretaker and is very obviously stronger, even when compared to the caretaker. There should be no debate, as Rhulk is the final boss in Battle of the Disciple and the character who controls the Upended. The Upended, which should deserve its own video, will be something I'll probably cover in its own video. So for now, let's go ahead and move on to number 1. For our number 1 spot is actually the main character. Now this might come as a surprise to a lot of people, since some people on Reddit or other websites will try to use the Cabal and the Fallen as a way to somehow downplay the Guardians below Planetary, and obviously that's a lie if you see my other videos. But anyway, back on the topic. So, for the main character, there is actually a lot of feats we have for the main character. First off, they're the strongest user of Stasis, which is a version of the Sword Logic, which puts them around the Hive Gods. Second, the main character made the Exotic Glaive. The reason why the Exotic Glaive matters is because it scales above Blueberry's Ruin, Rhulk's Glaive, which is a legendary glaive. His glaive scales around or above Rhulk, while the Exotic Glaive scales around or above Blueberry's Ruin. So, at the Relic, which not a lot of people know about the Relic, so I'll explain the scaling for the Relic. So, what happens at the Relic is that the main character has to use a lot of power to conceptualize and give a weapon shape or form. This is a raw power feat, and we have no other reason to think otherwise. So if we were to look at the evidence using the glaive as a bar, the main character is actually outputting enough power to actually outscale Rhulk by the creation of the glaive. And this is in their base form. This isn't even in super state. So we know for sure that the main character scales around Rhulk in terms of just stats. But that stats isn't the end of the equation. There's also hacks, which the main character has a lot of that also. Now, it's going to depend on the class and the subclass used by that class, but here's a largely similar set of powers that you'll see from the MC just in general. First, you'll see Erasure either from Solar, Void, Arc, or Stasis, and then besides Erasure, you have Wall Manipulation, you have Reality Warping, you have Subjective Reality, you have possible axiomatic manipulation, you have absorption, and then you have various other weapons that the MC has. From their special weapons to the primary weapons to the heavy weapons. Like Galahorn, Vex Mythal Class, Teraba. You know, there's a lot of weapons that the main character has to use at their disposal in order to take on, if not beat, Rhulk in a fight. The problem ultimately just comes at how we can use the glaives to scale Rhulk to the MC, but no matter how you look at it, Rhulk just scales below the MC because you can't prove that Blueberry's Ruin scales above the Exotic Glaive. So for this reason, we're putting the main character at number 1. And that's the tier list. If you guys liked the video, please give a like, maybe give a comment, and give your opinion. Of course, share it and subscribe if you're new. Please come join the Discord server if you'd like to talk about the video and any other Destiny videos I made. Anyway, my name is Nothing Important here. I hope you had fun watching the video, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day. So I'll see y'all later. Bye.